Hi, and welcome to this afternoon's live on They Shall Laugh and Sing. I'm Jeff Stewart. I'm a singer, singing teacher, and choral conductor. And They Shall Laugh and Sing is my attempt to help make the world a better place through singing by getting people to sing with more joy and feel that they get more out of life in doing it. And one of the features of that this year is going to be that I've invited Laura Mitchell, who's my guest today, to our course at Milton Abbey, because I think her work in voice medicine could really help so many of you to free yourselves from all that fear and worry that we have when we're singing. So welcome, Laura. It's great to have you on. Thank you for being here. Laura's between clients, hence the car. Laura, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into singing in the first place?
Absolutely. Firstly, thank you for having me and inviting me to Milton Abbey. I'm really looking forward to it. So I was an opera singer for 23 years. I still sing and sing opera when invited, and I got into this very early. So when I was 3, I was dancing and singing and doing eurythmy and kodai and learning the piano and the violin and singing. And I remember in school assemblies just being really loud and everyone was like, wow, wow, you love singing. And secondary school, I had lessons, and then I went. Actually, I was dared by my boyfriend when I was 17 to audition for all of the music colleges in London, and I did not, for 1 second think that I was of any caliber to get into an institution like that. But I did, and I got scholarships actually offered from all of them, apart from the academy. And I went to the Royal College of Music. I trained there extensively. I did an undergrad voice and piano, which ended up just being voice, thank goodness, and for everybody else. And then after that, I was at the Benjamin Britten International Opera School, which is held as part of the college. And then the National Opera Studio, which the studio was phenomenal. I think I probably learned the most there. Was a fantastic platform because you get to do little residencies at all of the major opera companies in the UK. And I was so lucky. I was offered work off the back of all of those. And that really sort of catapulted me into the beginning of my career. I had an agent at the time, you know how it goes with the agent. So I did all the auditions abroad and the circuit, as it were. And I then just had a very fortunate time. I went from job to job and met wonderful people and some less wonderful people, and walked the walk of life.
Yeah.
What I noticed whilst I was training was that with the increasing levels that I was working at, I was becoming more and more sort of anxious. I always had performance anxiety, but it was manageable. And certainly in the opera school, I was seeking help with performance anxiety. I was fine once I got on. It was really, the hour or two before. And I saw very different techniques, and kinesiology really worked. And so I did that for a long time and had this whole sort of routine before I went on. And actually, in those days, this whole thing about sort of manifestation, which is a huge buzzword now, it really wasn't a buzzword then. And I was just really lucky to have these people turn up and say, okay, look, before a performance, here are the things that you do, which actually they turn out to be huge manifestation techniques, which are in abundance worldwide now. Thank goodness. But along the way, I obviously needed to develop more and more different techniques, and the further on I got in my career, because after a while, the mind and the body get used to your practices, and they're just like, yeah, we need something else now. So I actually developed a lot of different ways to help me out getting on stage, and also in between the various jobs. I did a lot of training in yoga, in meditation, mindfulness. I trained as an Esalen massage therapist, so that was just sort of really, really beautiful, beautiful flow work, and helped a lot of my colleagues out as well at the time. So it sort of all led me to the question that I imagine you're about to ask me.
No, on you go. I mean, going back to the studio. When I was there, I found it was a tremendous experience. There were some amazing people there. I just was amazed by the workload. It just was just huge, but it was a great situation to be in. You know, and but so do you? I was listening to something the other day where Michael Singer, I think it was saying that stress is equal to pressure divided by resilience. And it's just that thing that you were talking about as you went further and further up the profession, so your body needs more, and every time you think you've got past it, or you found a set of things, that tools to get you past a certain issue, they come back stronger next time. I see that with singers all the time. So yeah, go on to your next thing then.
Exactly that. So I was doing a job, and I had an experience which, I mean, it's no secret, I have regaled a few times, which was that there was an unfortunate stage accident in which subsequently I was unable to walk or sing. And yeah, it was exactly that. It was just an accident. It was one of those things which I'm so deeply grateful for now, but not so much at the time. It was terrifying, you know, waking up. I think it was, 2 weeks after the actual accident, and I knew things weren't right. And I was on, diazepam and muscle relaxants and walking with 2 walking sticks, and it was and then one day I woke up and I couldn't move at all. My abdominal muscles didn't work. They didn't connect to my legs. I knew that I had whiplash up my spine and into my neck anyway, which was what I thought I was dealing with, hence the diazepam. But essentially I was kind of stuck because I had just moved house. And I didn't have a doctor. And so the doctor was saying, well, just come down to the surgery. And I was like, I can't walk. I can't. And they were like, well, call, 999 or 111, whatever it was. And of course, it wasn't a life and death situation, so they couldn't come out. So I was just kind of left there. Fortunately, my partner at the time had studied resistance therapy, muscle training, and physio. So he worked with me, and I began on a daily basis to try to quell my anxiety, which you can imagine was absolutely ginormous. And to work with fear in a very, very real context. So I don't ever recall a time when I was that frightened. So working with the techniques of meditation, they were wonderful, and mindfulness practices, phenomenal. And then doing very gentle resistance training with the parts of my body, like my hands and stuff that I could move, and starting to work with my neck and things like that. We began to rehabilitate me, and it was such a slow process. And so in the sort of very long days and long nights when I was in a lot of pain, I started to use sound. I was really into mantra at the time, and was studying with my very dear teacher, Kathy Maker-Else. And, we exchanged messages, and I was given different mantras. And I did. I chanted my ass off. And then I realized that actually it wasn't quite enough just to chant. I had to apply everything that I'd learned, both in the stage fright and performance anxiety techniques, of actually really focusing the mind, taking it into the manifestation technique, and really beginning to envisage all of the wires of my body connecting. Now, my biology was not great. And so I had a lot to study. So I started studying the neural pathways, and the connections of the muscles and the bones and the sinews and everything like this. And was introduced to the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and went into the world of the quantum world.
Let me just ask before you do dive into the quantum world.
Yeah.
Was the problem that the muscles themselves weren't working, or your brain could no longer communicate with them?
Very close. They're so interlocked that I hadn't realized that I was in deep shock.
Right.
I was in an immense amount of pain, and just normal bodily functions on a daily basis were virtually impossible. So yes, it was very tricky. So I'd say the two go hand in hand.
Right.
So I knew that by listening and reading and studying a lot, that I had to get both on board, and then on top of that I had to get my determination of spirit back on board, because it was quite low at the time. So I started using sound and envisaging the muscles connecting and the nerve endings connecting, using sound as well, and then imagining the world where they actually started working. And it took months, like 4, 5, 6 months, and nothing was broken per se, or at least I didn't think it was. And then eventually little bits of movement started coming back, and so I could, in a lot of pain still, get up and go to the toilet and things like that. And then the more movement came back, the more I was spurred on to keep going, and then the more actually I was able to do a bit more resistance training, so training the opposites, the muscle opposites, to work and to strengthen. But it was really about a year before I got back onto my feet, at which point I had to start learning how to sing again, because the technique of singing that I had was no longer going to work. I quickly discovered my body just remembered what happened and wouldn't do it.
Really? Gosh. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So how did you approach the singing again?
With great caution. I got myself a new teacher who taught a completely different technique, and I didn't get along with it too well, because I just wanted to go back to what I knew and had practiced all my life, that was effortless,
Yeah.
But again, practice makes perfect, or something near it anyway. And over time, it became actually one of the most natural forms of singing that I've ever done. And I've since sort of tried and learnt a few other styles as well. And eventually I did get back up on stage and carry on. But it was only the birth of my son. Gosh, want to get the years right, but it does blur into oblivion, the early years, So I think it was about 2 or possibly 3 years later.
Right.
I gave birth to my son.
Yeah.
And there was the most god almighty clunk. And it turns out that one of my fused vertebrae in the lower spine had actually been pushed out, which was why I was still in pain, even though, I'd done all this work. And it was phenomenal. It was such an incredible release, and it was quite astonishing, actually.
And that happened during giving birth? Oh, so most people are really sore after having a baby, and you're feeling better.
I was euphoric. I'm joking. I wasn't. I didn't quite realize, really what had happened. But 5 weeks after I'd given birth, I went and auditioned for a new agent, and he took me on, and work started coming in really quickly, which I also hadn't anticipated.
Was your voice very different to how it had been before?
Yeah, Yeah, it was. It was much fuller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a completely different genre, actually. So then I had to sort of start redoing and working and learning. You'll know, the voice changes. You have to learn your repertoire.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. It was really exciting because I'd always been all my teachers could feel that there was another sound in there, but nobody could unlock it. And neither could I. I was completely baffled. And actually, it was after birth that I was like, oh, well, there it is. Great. Off we go. Yeah. That's
fantastic. So at what point did you start moving into being a therapist yourself?
Okay. So what I discovered quite quickly was that singing and having a young child was very difficult. And that actually, I'd say in hindsight, I probably had postnatal depression. So what happened to me was I was singing and it was great, but I wasn't sleeping at all. My child didn't sleep. And there are all sorts of things going on. Singing and sleeping, they work well together, as you know. And so I sort of took on less. I just did concerts. And what was happening at that time was that I was actually going out to teach mindfulness in Cardiff, because I lived in Cardiff, and I was teaching yoga as well. And I was really enjoying that, and I could take my baby along and people loved it. And so I was doing a bit of singing, a bit of yoga teaching, a bit of mindfulness, and then I went into meditation. And I didn't ever teach voice and chanting at that point. That came a little bit later. But what had happened was, whilst I was pregnant, I'd started to become more aware of the connection that I'd had as a child, which was a very, very spiritual connection. And I don't want to go too way out there on anyone, but I was,
Feel free.
I was connecting with higher beings. And as a kid, I used to see them a lot and talk to them. And, and there were both the lovely side and the not so lovely side. And I quickly learned that actually I could see I could hear and feel and see when people were not telling the truth and being genuine. And I could hear and feel and see what was happening in their energetic body. It was just plain as day to me, and it used to freak people out a lot. So my parents eventually was just like, oh, maybe tone it down a bit, love.
But did you realize that other people couldn't see that?
No, not as a child, no.
Yeah, because I remember listening to a seminar by someone who had much the same sort of ability and could see the auras around people and their energies, and she just thought everybody could see. And amazing. Anyway, carry on.
So I mean, there's so many different things that went on, so I'm just trying to cherry pick. But essentially, when I was pregnant, I was like desperate to be pregnant, and my teacher gave me this beautiful mantra. And at the time I was commuting a lot, like sort of 3.5 hours, a couple of days a week. And I just chanted this mantra and invited my child in, if it was for the best of everybody involved. And 2 weeks later, completely out of the blue, I was pregnant.
Fantastic.
Phenomenal, right? And then with him came this extraordinary renewal of connection, which I hadn't at all anticipated, because I'd kind of gone through music college and I'd not been shutting it out, but I'd been so used to not tuning into it that I just didn't really think about it. There were points on stage where I'd been meditating so much that the focus that I had on stage was so close to the focus that I had in meditation that I would sometimes have a sort of out-of-body experiences while singing.
Oh, wow.
Not ideal. Which was a little frightening. So I was aware that something was going on. But anyway, my son, he was in my body, and I started receiving all these incredible downloads and connections with spirits that were saying, okay, look, time to do what you're really here for. That's it. what? And I got all of these other mantras coming through that I'd never heard of, that are mantras now, it turns out, and all these beautiful tunes. And I actually formed a group, and we put together this gorgeous album, which has not been heard by anybody. For various reasons. We didn't put it out there.
Right.
That group disbanded for reasons that we won't go into. But then I had a period of time where I was just sort of floating around and doing some teaching and doing some yoga teaching and doing some therapizing and energy healing and teaching people how to use their voices to heal themselves. The very early days of it. So yeah, that got me to there. And then I decided I really wanted to go back on stage again, and off I went. And very quickly realized that it was just too much, actually, for me at that stage. There was a lot going on, and I was on the verge of becoming a single parent. So at the point at which I did become a single parent, I said, okay, I just can't do this. I can't follow this. And I actually had a full system breakdown.
Right.
Fun times. And so, I mean, the other way of looking at this is that this is the way that I look at it now in hindsight, which was not how I looked at it at the time. Was a huge awakening. And, you know, this was me. The more I didn't do what was being asked of me by the guides and by the like ascended masters, the more difficult life became. And the more they were like, no, we're not doing that. Oh, you're not listening. Okay. You know, you can't do it anymore now, can you? And essentially where this got me to in the end was that I took up sound healing and studied it, and then did that for a little while. Met somebody that I worked with for a couple of years, and we created some beautiful music. With them, we parted company, and that sort of takes me to around about 3 years ago. And that's when I actually had to listen. I had to, you know, it was a real sit down and, for goodness sake, just listen. Otherwise, this is going to get really nasty. And so I did. And I listened, and I heard that actually what was required of me was that I share the things that I'd learnt, and that along the way I would acquire new skills, and that I just had to trust in that thing, which is a huge step. So I was quite quiet about it for a long time. So I took some clients on, started working with people with anxiety, started working with singers who were having troubles with their voices, started working with people who were very ill or terminally ill, which brings me up to present day as well. So I have a course whereby I actually teach people how to use their voices alongside and in conjunction with contemporary medicine, how to relate to that medicine in a way that allows it to do its job and allows them to then go away and have a whole host of other practices. I'm just going to shut my window. There we go. Sorry about that. And so I now work with a lot of clients who are, you know, cancer patients, and have been given a terminal prognosis. And I've had a lot of success actually with them, and some not so much, and others yes. But so I work one-to-one, and then I've started working in big groups and teaching people how to use their voices and to really enjoy it, you know, because the voice is such a vulnerable making thing. And it's also, like, for me, that, you know, everyone says like the eyes are the window to your soul. I say the voice is the window to your soul. It tells the vibration of everything we say, tells you and me everything we need to know about a person.
Absolutely. I always say to my students, I want to hear the moment a singer starts to sing, I want to know who they are. And if I don't, they're not really singing. And it's so important, and so many singers are so far away from that. So, but how how does it actually function in a nutshell, if that's possible? How does voice therapy help people with illnesses and stuff like that?
Okay, so in my world, everything is frequency or vibration, if you prefer that word. Our cells, everything that we are made up of is fundamentally held together with vibration, and that forms our structure, it forms our body. Obviously, we have a mind, which is extraordinary. It's the most incredible computer ever made. But when we experience trauma, or we're afraid to feel emotion, or cannot, or have repressed, things get stuck in the cells, because the cells are trying to, they're trying to help us and stay healthy. But at the same time, if we have big emotions or big experiences that we simply can't process, and our mind really can't take, then it gets stored in the body, in the cells. And when those cells become really weak, because they get, weak and flabby with all of the stuff that they're holding, they need some help. So what I do is I teach people to use their voices, which in itself is a highly emotive thing, as you know, and to become comfortable to a certain extent with their sound. And it's an evolving comfort. And then I show them how to direct that sound so that we can release the emotions, release the trauma if there is any, or quite simply show people how to use their voices where they have not been able to or did not know how to before. And in that vibration, we then target specific areas. Now, sometimes people will just start singing or making a sound, very specific sounds, which some of them are generic, like you can do the chakra sounds. And some of them are sounds that when I'm working with people or in a group, I'm given to make, they're like, the guides are like, no, this is what they need to hear. This is what they need to do. So I'm given those. And quite often, if you have a group of people, there's like a common theme going on within that group. And it's very quickly clear what's needed for me. And then I impart that. And using that sound gives the cells the vibration they need to start releasing and returning to health and letting go of stuff. So sometimes that can come out in all manner of ways. It might be that you get nothing from it and then you go home and have a response, or you go home and have a dream, or you finally begin to enjoy your sound and your voice. There are so many people that don't enjoy their voices, or who have been taught not to speak the truth or their truth. And in doing so, that also creates a cognitive dissonance. And where there's cognitive dissonance, there's a disagreement in the body. Which then needs reuniting and putting back together. Does that answer the question?
It does. It does. It's one of those funny things, because over the last few years, where I've started to do much more meditation myself and just be much more open to different things. What you're saying now, I'm just thinking, of course. 20 years ago, I'd have said that's scary, that's anti-religious, and that's all the things that I nearly got into a fight with someone a few months ago, but backed off when they said, well, of course I don't do yoga because yoga's against Christianity. I think, no, it's not, and that sort of thing. And I'm so excited that you're coming down to Milton Abbey, because I need people like you to guide people towards what we're after, and I think it's just an amazing prospect. What can they sort of expect from a session with you at Milton Abbey?
A one-to-one or a group?
A group session, yeah.
In a group session, usually we'll gather and I will just sit and lead people into a breathing practice to start with, whilst I'm tuning in and gauging where the group is at and what is needed. There is always a little bit of physical movement. There is always a little bit of breathing, and there is always sounding. Now, some of that can be partner work. Again, it very much depends on the group dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And people of all abilities, ages, everyone is welcome. And the group is very much tailored for whoever is there. So sounding, you guys are singers, so
Yeah.
this is wonderful. Sounding and actually teaching people how to direct the sound so it's a felt experience in the body, it will be a primary thing that we are doing.
Yeah.
And working, in both individually and in groups, as I tend to go around and make sure everybody gets a little bit of time and a little bit of one-to-one interaction where I can just tweak things. Sometimes it's about the mouth position, sometimes it's about the posture, sometimes it's about something that just needs a little bit of aligning in the body.
Yeah.
And other times it's the physical need for actual vibration release. So
Yeah.
that can show itself either in a movement, like, for example, I'm a trained trauma therapist as well. So that's not so much something that I would usually do in a group, but there are certain movements that you can do that allow you just the most incredible feeling of freedom. And there's the key word, is this giving people the freedom in their voice and in their body, and connecting the dots. So connecting the mind, the physical body, with the energetic sensation of singing.
Yeah. Fantastic. It sounds so exciting. It's and I think for a lot of people that attend these sort of things, this will be completely new. So we're gonna get you to do a group session over the weekend, and then people will be able to book individual sessions with you separately, which is great. And it's lovely that you're going to be down for a couple of days and can really get into. Have you ever been to Milton Abbey?
No, I haven't. It looks amazing.
Beautiful. It's really, really wonderful. And just having our own sort of short cathedral to work in all the time is fantastic. I'm so excited by this whole thing. It's just you're exactly what I've been looking for to bring into this company, and I think it's going to be fabulous to work together. We've come to the end of our half hour, so I'd just like to say thank you so much for being on. I hope this is, for those of you who are watching, Facebook has changed settings so that we're having to do this in a different way. I've no idea how you watch or in what form you're seeing it. So I'm hoping lots of you are seeing it live. But Laura, it's been brilliant to have you on. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in August.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to see you in August.
Okay, take care. And I'm about to try and end the street. There we go. Lovely. Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.